All right, there. Katie Sutton, welcome back to your show.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Last week we talked about, what was last week? It was 4 questions on how to revamp your career or sort of like reframe or relook at your career.
Yeah.
And now if you've taken those and you've done those, I did a little bit. I think it was a good way to look at things because it allows you to reverse engineer. Because what you would tell a 17-year-old, right? It's May as we record this. Next month, all these high school kids are going to graduate. These kids today, and that question's going to come up. What do you want to be when you grow up? Or what are you going to major in school? What job are you going to get after that? And the funny part is, someone said it when I was graduating high school, which was 1997, and I think the world was moving pretty fast in 97, but it's not even close to how fast the world is moving now.
Yeah.
So the reality is the jobs that the class of 2025 graduating from high school or college are going to have 5 years from now, they might not have been invented yet.
100%.
So we talked about this a little bit last time, which is look for the elements or the skills, right? Because skills are like the periodic table of elements of whatever it is you are, what you like doing, what the world needs, what you can get paid for, and what you're good at, right? That's Ikigai. What you love, what the world needs, what you can get paid for, what you're good at. So cool. But what skills, like in what direction? So not just saying to a high school graduate in 2025 or a college student in 2025, what classes should you take? A lot of times you work at a university, majors did not exist 5 years ago, and now they do, right?
Yeah.
Complete programs, complete schools didn't exist. So there was you found this. There was a recent report from World Economic Forum,
I think. Yeah.
And they did this really, I like charts. I like reading and everything, but like when you give me like an image to look at and I can sort of parse out what that is. And I thought that this image was really good. So we're going to flash it on the screen if you're watching a live stream on YouTube, but we'll walk through it. And this is, what kind of a chart is this? A quadrant?
I guess. Yeah.
A graph?
Yeah.
That sort of highlights on one side share of organizations that consider skills increasing in use by 2030 across the x-axis. And across the y-axis, they're talking about share of organizations that consider skills to be core skills in 2025. So what it's saying is what's important now and what will be important later. And obviously, if you look at that on an XY graph, the top, as always, or most of the time, top and to the right is better in this case. So where do you want to start? I've broken the images so we can look at them better into the 4 quadrants. We got to save the best for last, right? Let's save the future for last. What's going to be better? So let's start with out of focus skills.
I was just going to say, let's start with the out of focus skills because I actually found this to be quite interesting.
Okay, so out of focus skills, like the worst possible or one of the worst possible skills on here, manual dexterity, endurance, and precision. Like people who are good with their hands, like that jumped out at me because
Crazy.
I recently renovated my kitchen and people who are good with their hands, dude, they are worth a lot because. So I think what this is saying too is what it says less essential now and not expected to increase in use. I think because this is the Global Economic Forum, they're looking at that on larger scales in terms of computing power. So that one jumped out at me, but I don't want people to say, well, maybe I shouldn't go back to school to be in the trades if that's what you like. I would actually encourage someone to do that. But what else on this quadrant of out of focus skills, less essential now and not expected to increase in use in 2030? Anything else jump out?
Reading, writing, and mathematics. And I honestly think this is because of some of the things that's in the other categories like AI. You know, do you remember when we were in school and your teacher was like, you're not going to have a calculator with you all the time? And I'm like, well,
listen, Mrs. Shiner, I'm very sorry, but in 5th grade, you said it's not like you're going to have a calculator in your pocket. And you're right. I could have an AirPod in my ear and just ask it to do the math for me. So now I'm not advocating for students or, you know, these kids today to understand the concepts of math, but like the kid who won the math bee or the spelling bee, cute trick, but not necessarily the most important thing as we go into 2030.
No, yeah.
Multilingualism. We know that there are, I mean, the one of the AI scribes that the company my day job uses, Athelis, it can change a note into 60 different languages with a click, like
It's
a click.
wild. Yeah.
So it's wild. You can put an AirPod in and have an in-person, real-time conversation with someone in a different language, and you can understand that person. I mean, this is Star Trek level stuff. Did you watch Star Trek? Were you a dork?
No, I
Or
did
a
not.
geek? I think I was a geek. And they would get over the fact that, like, well, how does everybody in space speak English? And they solved that by saying we have a universal translator. And that was like a cheap way of like saying, like, okay, well, the audience has to understand it, so we'll just shoot everything in English. Except that's a thing now. Like,
Yeah.
in the future, you might have that built into your house. You might just have speakers around the house and be able to have a conversation. So manual dexterity, reading, writing, and arithmetic, multilingualism. This one sort of shocked me. You're in education, teaching and mentoring.
I know. It was on my list of, I highlighted the ones that were either surprising or like shocking to me. And that was one that I had highlighted because I actually tell students all the time, I'm like, hey, some of the number one ways to avoid burnout is to either get mentorship or mentor someone else. And so if they're listening to this, they're probably going to be like, Katie said. But again, less essential, not expected to increase. So that doesn't mean that it's not important.
Right. All right. So this is the bottom left of the graph as Tony Maritato chimes in, teach them how to fish. So like that, I believe he's talking about in terms of like math instead of like, teach them how to do this stuff. So I don't know. To me, I would expect, and I've cheated because I've looked at this graph before, the ability to communicate an idea is going to be up there. So this is the bottom left. Where do you want to go? Where do you want to go now?
Ooh, let's go to, how about steady? Yeah, let's do steady.
Steady skills. So this would be core now, but not expected to increase in the future. So this would be the bottom right of the graph, like getting better, but not expected to increase. Not a whole lot on here that fits there. Dependability and attention to detail. If you're going to have AI oversight, you can, I use Grammarly. I was never good at grammar and I have a degree in journalism. Like I could get the idea, but help me get the fine point. Where does the apostrophe go again? Possessive. I never learned that. And I'm 45. I'm not going to.
Oxford comma. Nobody really knows.
Yeah. Service orientation and customer service though.
Yeah. Steady skill.
Yeah.
I mean, I can use all the technology I want, but I still hope that when I go to the coffee shop, I get great service and customer service, oriented towards the human experience.
The funny part is as the pendulum swings, the funny thing is that's how pendulums work, right? So some of these things that are going to be, quote, less important in the next 5 years will likely improve. Gary V, do you know Gary V? You don't seem like a person who would listen to Gary V. That doesn't shock me, but the look on your face. Gary V's a bit in your face. He said something the other day, and he says a lot of things that are ridiculous now and then wind up coming true. Like he started doing a YouTube channel about wine tasting 15 years ago, and everybody was like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And he grew it to a multi-million-dollar business.
Yeah.
He said in 10 years or 5 years, I bet you'll be paying people to take walks with you. Like human companionship. Like there's a library somewhere in Europe that you can rent, you can take people out, like people with various backgrounds and spend an hour with them. And that's laughable right now until you live in a world where that isn't commonplace. Yeah. And now the rare thing is the valuable thing, the thing that was everywhere. All right. So that's the bottom right. I don't think we saw anything revolutionary in the bottom left and bottom right.
Wait, like, bring that back up.
Which one? The bottom right?
The steady skills. Yeah.
Steady skills. There we go.
Steady skills. Because I think, where is it? Empathy was somewhere close to that one. Empathy and active listening. But it might have been on the, you know what? Also, this might be a pared down version. We've looked at a couple of versions of this. So yeah.
Where do you think empathy was? Was that growing or not growing? My guess would be it would be growing. But let's look at the top left and top right of this graph now.
Oh, it's on the border. It's on the border of core skills growing. And yeah, see, so like some of those are like right on the border, like design and user experience, So
design and user experience, environmental stewardship, and networks and cybersecurity. So these are emerging. They're less essential now, but expected to increase in use. So this will be the top left of the graph. Listen, everything's going to be built on a network. So just simply telling somebody who's 22 years old to go get a degree in it or to finalize that. Like, I don't think that helps enough. I think you have to look at the core elements of what goes into that. Just because it's a safe bet. I mean, years ago it was learn how to code. And then, Katie, you could log on to ChatGPT and code an app if you really had the desire, because it would be your coder for you. But that wasn't a thing a couple
No.
months ago for me. Environmental stewardship. I'm shocked to see something with the environment jump on and be anywhere, because typically we've just sort of trashed that thing for the longest time. But, and I know very little about this, but the computing power, the energy required to run these AI systems.
Just going to say that. Yeah.
The water required to cool them. Is not small.
So if we're using this AI more frequently, we've got to find that balance, because we can't just continue to trash everything. So so I could see that that's going to be up there on that list.
All right, so top right, like this is the reason people open a graph like this. This is the reason we saved it for 11 minutes into the episode.
Yes.
So what is core now and expected to increase in the importance? If you've got kids, this is the one we're going to say: skate to where the puck is going to be, not to where the puck is. So here it is, top right, core skills in 2030. Does this shock you, Katie Sutton? When did you finally actually create a ChatGPT account after me harping on this for you for a long time? How long did it take? And how long have you been playing with AI?
About 6 months.
Okay, good.
And so now that I'm playing with it, I love it.
I still think you're ahead of the largest portion of the curve.
Really? You think?
Yes. There are people who are sleeping on this and bitching and saying, get off my lawn. AI and big data is the highest one on this list. Core now and expected to increase.
Way up there. Yeah.
Technological literacy, also up there. Now, here's the funny part, or what I take from this. It doesn't say technological ability. It says technological literacy.
Yeah.
If I don't know how to do something, but I'm literate and I can go to the library or Google something or watch a video, I can learn how to now do that thing. Totally Still Watching is famous. I don't know something.
Yep.
So it's saying technological literacy. It's like, I know enough on how to figure it out. If you can show me how to tie a fishing line and how to bait the hook, I'll figure the fish out.
I'll figure it out. Yeah.
So technological literacy is huge, because these things are going to play with each other. They already are. Like how we produce these podcasts, how we're able to create images or to write the show notes or to set up outlines before we record. All these things come into play. So I think technological literacy, AI, and big data are the number one and number two.
Yeah.
And then talk about this one to the right: resilience, flexibility, and agility. That is very high on the list in future core skills in 2030. Why do you think that made it?
I think that you're going to have to be somewhat resilient to push forward in a technologically advanced world, right? I mean, that's going to be very challenging. And again, someone like myself who kind of fought it kicking and screaming, and you're like, it's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It isn't something that comes easy. You just taught me how to work my mic like 5 seconds ago before we got started. So, but continuously coming back to it and trying to wrap your brain around it. I mean, but it's the same thing with what we do in education. I mean, students come in and it's a fire hose of information, and you have to have a certain level of grit and resiliency to keep coming back to class, because it would just be really easy to be like, I'm done.
Can you tell in the first week of class who's going to do well, who's going to have some problems, and maybe who's not going to make it? Like, are there like key indicators, even if you maybe don't have words for them? Like, can you just sort of can you tell?
I would say within the first couple of weeks, you can tell who's like all in and who's not all in. And I think that goes back to the whole 4 qualities of a good career. Did these people really educate themselves on what they were getting themselves into? We're in physical therapy, so it's amazing the amount of people who come in and go, I didn't know I had to touch feet. I didn't know I had to toilet someone. So, those kind of things that can like totally check someone out. But it's also very, very interesting and really cool to see when you have a student who gets through, I don't know, the first year, and they were the person who was like, I'm only doing outpatient orthopedic sports and all of this, and then they find this love in acute care rehab settings, inpatient, or the people who had a lot of life challenges happening early in their initial educational career, and they overcome these things. And you're like, that student shouldn't have made it this far. And they find the resilience and the grit and things like that. So
Yeah.
that's pretty cool to see.
I mean, if there are kids listening, earmuff it, but I was taught you can't teach, give a shit. If you really want this, you'll find a way. You beg, borrow, and steal, right? Adapt, evade, and overcome. That's what I think that's Navy SEALs. They're just like, you'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Hell or high water. That is a skill that is high and to the right now and expected to actually increase in importance. Here's why. When I started this podcast in 2015, that's 9.5 years ago, right? There was nobody. And it was both hard to get traction because I had to explain to people what a podcast
was. Yep.
Right? But there was no competition. But people didn't know what it was, right? So you fought that. And then there was a tipping point where enough people knew what it was, but then more people started to make podcasts. Yeah. And now, Katie Sutton, I think that more people actually have podcasts than don't have podcasts. Everybody and their mom has their podcast. People have 6 podcasts, right? So why do you think mine does well? I'm using air quotes. I think mine does well not because I'm the smartest guy in the room. I'm not. I'm never the smartest guy in the room. Even full of toddlers, I'm never the smartest guy in the room. I think it's because of this thing. I like it enough to be resilient and flexible. I had my buddy Drew yelling and screaming at me in 2019, 2020. You need to do video. I don't want to do video. I'm a radio guy. It's a podcast, dude. Pay attention, bro. And he was right. Most of the time, the thing we resist or we want to resist, deep down, we know we have to. We don't want the icky feeling of change and the fact that now things are going to get harder and heavier. Most of the time, I try to stay away from always. Most of the time, though, when you get past that, you wish you started earlier, went bigger, had done it sooner.
And so did the thing. Just hit the start button.
Yeah. I knew I should have went to video earlier. What else is in the top right that makes...
I think
these are all my favorite. These are all my favorite things, by the way. So I'm excited for my future because everything here I love.
Curiosity and lifelong learning, though, I think that ties also into that resiliency. Like, again, just going back to teach them how to fish and the resiliency. Well, if you want to be resilient, you're going to have to continue to ask questions. And if you keep asking questions, you're going to continue to be curious and you're going to continue to learn and all of this stuff. So, I mean, just with the whole Drew talking you into doing video, I mean, you've been trying to talk me into doing video. And I'm like, hold on, wait a minute. Let me get my feet steady and all of that stuff. Well, here we are, 2 years later.
Tony, if he's still watching, Tony and I and Dave Kittle do a live stream focused on business, right? I would say curiosity and lifelong learning is on the list. Resilience, flexibility, and agility, not actual physical agility, but mental agility.
Yes.
This is why if you go into Facebook groups in our profession and out, you see people bitching and moaning about the way it is. They want the way it is to be better. They have to understand that they need to change first. The way is don't ask for it to be easier, just become better. And unfortunately, better doesn't happen passively most of the time, right? No. So look at all these things combined, right? Resilience, flexibility, agility, curiosity, lifelong learning, technological literacy. These are some human components. Yeah. You're going to have to keep working. Bad news. Listen, when my dad got a job in 1974, he learned something and then along the way learned a little bit. But the biggest learning came, I'm guessing, in the first 3 to 5 years. My dad was a fireman. The physics of fire didn't really change a lot. Fire burn, it go up, right? It go out. Yeah. It can kill you. Stay low. Now, maybe I know this, but they invented new tools, different types of nozzles, different equipment. So the little bit of learning along the way, but most of it, he didn't have to. That's one type of job. The jobs that we're in are very, very human oriented. And those are messier and you're going to have to pivot.
Yeah.
And if you don't have these skills, I don't see you being successful in the
Mm-mm.
future in most professions. Leadership and social influence. I
Yeah.
don't know
Well,
what that
you know
means.
what I find interesting about this is some of my original kicking and screaming about AI was I was afraid it would remove that human experience. And if you remember me saying it's going to take over your brain,
You did say
but
that, and I think you mentioned it.
I did say that. It might be written somewhere too, but it didn't. When you look at that list of skills, there's still very much human element things that are in that expected to continue to grow. Resilience, flexibility, curiosity, lifelong learning, leadership, and social influence. So it's not saying that it's removing the human experience. As a matter of fact, it might be upping the human experience a little bit.
I have, since I bought a house 3 years ago, I now have acquired tools. And this shocks a lot of people that know me, that I probably should never have a power tool in my hand. But I've gotten better. I've learned to use them. I've got a chainsaw outside in the shed. In the hands of my buddy, it's going to be a better tool, more efficient, faster, better. I'm pretty okay now. Me 3 years ago was horrible. I think of like the stuff we're talking about now, playing with ChatGPT, the thing that will come out in 6 months to make all of our eyes spin again, right? It's not the tool that's going to change it. In the hands of someone who is willing, ready,
Mm-hmm.
willing, and able to learn how to use it better, that
Mm-hmm.
person will succeed. That person will have a smoother path in life. But you got to put the work in. Like,
Yeah.
these are common patterns. You could say the same thing, but for a computer back in 1983,
Mm-hmm.
computers were going to take over, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's the person who knows how to use that and is willing to put the time, effort, and money into it. Talent management, systems thinking, motivation, and self-awareness also
Ooh,
make
yeah.
the list of
I
core
like that
skills that
one.
are important now and getting more important. What jumps out at you from those three remaining? Talent management, systems thinking, and motivation and self-awareness.
Motivation and self-awareness. So we were just talking about like some of the big Facebook groups that you get into and people whining and complaining. Well, first of all, have you done any work to self-assess where you are? Like if it's not working, do some self-assessment, figure out where you need to be, start pulling a seat up to that table.
Yeah.
So I always tell you that I get frustrated when PTAs kind of get like, oh, well, I'm just PTA and nobody listens to me and I don't have a voice and blah, blah, blah. And I see it the opposite. I'm like, well, I'm just going to keep showing up places where PTAs aren't going and I'm going to ask the questions. And so far, I've not been kicked out of any space. They've all been like, come on in, take a seat. So just pull the chair up.
There's a few situations that I like to point out where people's bitching, I don't know. When's bitching productive? I'm not saying I don't do it. I get pissed a lot.
We all do. Yeah.
And, I was told long ago, you're allowed to bitch for 24 hours and then you got to put your boots back on and like start solving it. No one's coming to you.
Yeah.
Did I ever tell you the boat story or the boat like little analogy? It's like one of these moments in my life that like I still remember. So I was training to be a beach lifeguard for a summer. I was going to be an ocean lifeguard. I was in North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, one of the best summers of my life. And they did like a week of like training. And it was awesome, right? They were flinging us around on jet skis and, we're doing the Baywatch thing and whatever.
Crazy.
It was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
One day we were doing boat rescues and they were showing us and they knew we were like kid. They weren't going to let us drive the boat, but they had to train us on it. So they did. Plus they wanted to drive the boat too, the lifeguards, right? So one day we're doing boats and jet skis and we're jumping off stuff and we're just, otherwise messing around and just learning this stuff. The next day we're out on the beach at 6:30 in the morning. And the instructor, I'm not going to try to do the accent, but he had a South Carolina accent. And he points to a buoy that was like, I don't know, 1,000 yards offshore. And you could kind of see it. And he's like, the goal of this exercise is go touch the buoy and come back. And one of the kids from yesterday said, where's the boat? And this guy just looked at it and goes, you're the boat. Start swimming. So like that stupid little thing, it was not arranged to be a life lesson for me, but that's my line. When it's like, you want that sail, I want that next milestone, that marker, I got news for you. There's no boat coming.
Nobody's coming to save you.
So when I'm in Facebook groups and people are bitching, I hear Monty, who was one of the lifeguard instructors, I hear his voice going, all these people they're standing on shore waiting for the boat. That buoy is not getting closer. It's only getting further. And they don't know. They're the boat. But they
Motto
don't
for the
understand.
day, be the boat.
Yeah. And they don't recognize that they have the skills and the tools available to them. Some of us have more money and more connections and all that stuff. Sucks, dude. Some of us have bigger arms and bigger hands and we can swim faster. Start swimming now. I don't know. Like, use what you have as much as you can. So if I'm renovating the downstairs room to be more of an office, and like I've seen people do like neon lights, like custom neon lights and stuff. And You're the Boat is one of those things for me. I was like, I don't have any tattoos, but if I got one, that might be it. It's a reminder to me. It's like, I don't care what situation you're in. This has nothing to do with water or buoys or boats. This has to do with get your shit together.
Yeah.
You're the boat. So
motivation, self-awareness.
These are all things that are important.
Core skill 2030.
And then systems thinking. I don't even know the official term. My guess is if you can understand how two things can play together, like we're doing a live stream right now. That's one system. Well, when we're done, I'm going to get a transcript of this episode. I can then put that in ChatGPT and say, what's the best title for this episode to get the most people to click on it on YouTube? So that's using two different systems. I might be wrong, but that's my interpretation of just saying two words together that I know. Systems things. How do these things play?
Yeah, we don't have the definitions with these, so.
I'm sure they're there, but Jimmy doesn't look at words. I look at pictures because I'm a big dumb animal. Do you bring things like this image and this report into the classroom with your students?
Yeah, sometimes.
What would you wrap up with that? How would you wrap up with your students after you said, listen, I want you, this is, extra credit homework, or this is something I want you to do that's outside the syllabus, but it's important because you are students in this moment right now in history. How would you sort of sum up why they should pay attention to a report like this?
Well, I think because where did we see the manual dexterity, endurance, and precision? It was down in the out of focus, I believe. Yeah. In a PTA program, what do? We teach them to work with their hands the whole time. So it's tons of labs. They're working with their hands over and over and over again. So my challenge to them would be, all right, I want you to look up there at that list of core skills in 2020 or 2030 that are expected to increase. And what creative things can we do to make our lives easier in the clinic within that bracket? Because we're so focused on all of the hands-on and manual, and that's fine. That's what they're going to need to be a good PT and PTA. But there's a lot of other things that happen in our day-to-day job that are the things that we don't like: documentation, billing, that kind of thing.
But if you can use systems thinking and technological literacy, like, again, my day job, we have an AI scribe, and people are like, I don't know if I'll switch. And I just look at these people and I do not try to convince anymore. I'm just sitting there. I'm old enough now to say, you do realize that there's not a person in 3 years that's not going to be using one of these. And maybe I'm even wrong in terms of saying 3 years. It's probably going to be sooner. But these people who are going to hang on and be the last bastion of writing manually because they want to prove that they're going to do it old school way. I mean, I'll date myself again. I edited radio commercials with a razor blade and Scotch tape and reel to reel. Now, I was like, that was the very end of that. Like, immediately while I was learning that, I was learning digital. And I learned it because the old guy there said, this is the right way to do it. And I remember thinking, okay, if he says it, I'll do it. And then I played with a digital editor and I was like, I'm going to need you to explain why this is better. Yeah. And it was better because it was nostalgic to him. And that was the way. And he didn't want to let go of that change. I know plenty of older people who are very adaptable to change. This is not an age thing. This is a mentality thing. This is not be like me trying to be anti-ageist, which I would like to be, but this is if you're seeing this old person not able to adapt, it's because they have a crappy mindset, not because these things are not correlation and causation. There are plenty of older people
who want to. And that's fine too, if someone just doesn't want to learn. Yeah, I mean, I'll date myself. Back in 1999, I was an aide in a physical therapy department, and I would physically call every patient to remind them of their appointment tomorrow or whatever. Well, what happens now? You're getting
an auto text message. We have the ability to do auto AI phone calls now. And these are not like pipe dreams. These are very accessible to people.
Yeah.
In fact, if you're not using them, I question your ability to do the things in the top right-hand corner, which is systems thinking, resilience and flexibility. Like you aren't taking advantage of the tools. You're
No.
waiting for the buoy to come to you instead of
Big
you being
boat.
the boat.
Yeah.
All right, we're at the half hour mark. What's your parting shot?
Ooh. Well, I guess my parting shot would be just to embrace the change. I have been very forward that I was fighting some of the change myself. And now that I have embraced the change, I find that it makes my life a lot easier. So instead of sitting here racking my brain about a specific task I have to do, I usually say, is that something I can run through ChatGPT and make my life easier and save me an hour of time so I can move on to something else? So if you just learn to look at this core skills list in 2030 and not go, well, that stinks, but instead say, in what ways can I start to embrace this? I think it's going to make everybody's lives easier.
I agree.
Yeah.
I was going to have a very boring parting shot, and then you made me think of something. Bruce Lee, for the younger people in the audience, was an actor, martial arts expert, left the world
I do know Bruce Lee.
a lot too soon, was killed accidentally on a movie set, ironically. But he had a great quote, which was "Be water." And his whole idea was like, you can fight water. It's hard. Like fighting through water. If you've ever tried to swim, fighting the water, you're going to lose. So his whole idea with be water, which is like work with it, right? Understand what environment you're in, if it's water, and figure out how to move through it. Maybe trying to run through water isn't going to work. But if I get into a good swimming position, I can move through water, work with the water.
Work with
So
it.
the water in this scenario on this chart anyway, looking towards the future, is all the different ways the world is turbulent and waves are coming and it's changing.
Yeah.
Be
I mean,
water.
have you ever done whitewater rafting?
I have.
Yeah. And what do they tell you if you fall out of the boat? Don't stand up.
Correct.
You go with the flow.
Yeah.
Right. So if you stand up, you're going to get hurt.
You're going to get your ass kicked.
Yeah.
All right. We're back next week, same time, but you can take a listen to your podcast, PTA Plus podcast. One of the very few focused, hosted by a PT for PTAs. And we are also headed to the future of rehab therapy, FORT, the APTA event. Drew Contreras is spearheading that.
Summit, right? Yeah.
Future of rehab therapy
summit. It's a lot to say.
We'll put the link in the show notes for that. That's going to be Washington, D.C. A lot of these things and these skills that are being talked about right now will be on display in full view. So check out APTA, their website for Future Rehab Summit. Katie Sutton,